Welcome back to the Deep Dive, your shortcut to being well-informed. Today's a special one for us. It's actually our 20th Deep Dive.
Wow, 20 already.
Yeah, and we're incredibly proud to share these insights with you. Your support has just been amazing. So we're cutting through the noise today, Tuesday, July 29, 2025, and we're unpacking the daily intelligence brief from Monday, July 28th.
Let's get into it.
So our source for this, as always, is NextSight. They're an intelligence company really known for their global focus. And they've even developed their own, cutting-edge open-source intelligence platform, SiteConnect. It's designed to empower investigators all over the world.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible stuff. Pulling data from, over 200 sources. ClearNet, DeepNet, DarkNet.
Exactly, and then enriching it with AI to deliver, actionable insights.
And what's really impressive about NextSight, I think, is their commitment to relevance. They don't just give you raw data, right?
Yeah.
They actually customize these detailed reports to fit what specific clients need, making sure the information is always precisely what's needed. If you're curious, you can check them out yourself. It's www.next-site.com.
Absolutely worth a look. And yeah, this is our regular deep dive looking at global developments and specifically tailored to bring you the kind of most critical takeaways from that Monday brief.
Got it.
Now, before we jump into the stories themselves, just a quick word on how these reports are structured. NextSight uses something called reliability confidence flags.
Right. These are important. They give us a clear sense of the information's quality.
So explain the reliability scale.
Sure. For reliability, they use the Admiralty A to F scale. A is completely reliable. You can bank on it.
Okay.
B is usually reliable, so generally trustworthy. C, fairly reliable, maybe take it with a grain of salt. D, not usually reliable, need high skepticism. E is unreliable, don't count on it. And F means cannot be judged, just not enough info.
And the confidence scale.
That's a 1 to 6 scale for information confidence. 1 is confirmed by independent sources, solid, corroborated.
The best kind.
Exactly. 2 is probably true, high likelihood.
Right.
3, possibly true, could be, but not certain. 4 is doubtfully true, leaning towards not true. 5, improbable, very unlikely. And 6, like F, cannot be judged, insufficient data.
Understanding those flags is really crucial for anyone trying to navigate all this complex information.
Yeah.
It helps you discern the nuance.
Absolutely.
I mean, the context.
Okay, let's dive in then. Let's unpack some of the most impactful developments from Monday's report.
Sounds good.
We'll start in North America. The overall threat level there is listed as moderate, but the risk level is high.
Right.
And the top story seems to be these ongoing U.S.-China tariff truce talks.
Yeah, this report is flagged B2, so that's usually reliable and probably true.
Okay, so pretty solid. What happened?
Well, top U.S. and Chinese officials met in Stockholm for over 5 hours on Monday.
5 hours, wow. Yeah, aiming to extend their tariff truce by 90 days. This was really critical to avoid what they called triple-digit tariffs kicking in on August 12th.
That sounds serious. And who was involved? High-level stuff.
Definitely. U.S. Treasury Chief Scott Bessent and Chinese Vice Premier He Lifeng were at the table. Meanwhile, President Trump was talking with the UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer and publicly hoping China would open up.
So lots of political maneuvering alongside the economics, isn't it?
Absolutely. The Associated Press, The Guardian, they both corroborated Trump's comments. And the underlying tension, as Reuters pointed out, is that without a deal, global supply chains face, renewed turmoil.
How did markets react?
Cautiously. U.S. stocks actually trimmed their gains, but interestingly, the yuan edged a bit higher. It really shows this isn't just about tariffs anymore. It's strategic. Trade is being used as a major foreign policy tool.
Yeah, forcing companies to rethink everything based on geopolitics, not just cost.
Exactly. Supply chain resilience is the name of the game now.
Okay, shifting focus a bit, but still on international dynamics. President Trump also set a deadline for Russia regarding Ukraine.
Right. This one also carries a B2 flag. Usually reliable, probably true.
And the details?
On July 28th, President Trump basically shortened Moscow's timeline to make progress on ending the invasion. He gave them a tight 10-12 days.
10 to 12 days, that's fast.
Very fast. And he threatened new sanctions, too, on Russian exports and even countries buying their goods.
How was that received?
Well, Ukrainian President Zelensky praised the move, as you'd expect, but former Russian leader Dmitry Medvedev, according to Reuters, threatened counter-escalation.
So it raises the question of leverage, doesn't it? What can really happen in 10, 12 days in that kind of conflict?
That's the big question. Markets stayed stable for the moment, but energy traders, They immediately started hedging against potential supply disruptions.
So it's not just political talk. It has immediate market ripples, affects oil prices, shipping.
Everything. It's a direct signal about potential future volatility.
Okay, let's look domestically in the U.S. for a moment. The report says U.S. stock markets edged higher on trade optimism.
Yeah, this one's A1, completely reliable, confirmed by independent sources, so very solid data.
What were the numbers?
On the 28th, the S&P 500 gained 0.1%, hit a record high, actually. NASDAQ added 0.3%, but the Dow slipped just a tiny bit, 0.1%.
And the reason?
Investors seemed optimistic about progress in the U.S.-EU trade talks, which we'll get to. Plus, they were waiting for quarterly earnings and a Federal Reserve rate decision.
So a moderate risk appetite. Holding pattern, almost.
Yeah, exactly, as AP News reported, kind of holding its breath, waiting for the next shoe to drop.
Okay, moving north now.
Yeah.
Air Canada reported a significant drop in profit, and it seems linked to a U.S. travel boycott.
That's right. This is a B2 report. Air Canada's quarterly earnings fell quite a bit, down to 60 Canadian cents per share from 98 cents a year earlier.
And the cause?
Explicitly linked to lower passenger demand for U.S. routes. And that was driven by the new tariffs and President Trump's rhetoric. Reuters observed Canadians were actively boycotting U.S. goods.
Wow, that's a really clear example of how these big political tensions hit corporations directly, right? Through consumer action.
Absolutely. It shows that political talk, even before full implementation, can have immediate economic bite. Corporate profitability takes a hit.
And speaking of Canada-U.S. tensions, the report also notes that trade talks are intensifying and tariffs look likely.
Another B2 report here. On the 28th, Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney said negotiations were in an intense phase and some tariffs were likely.
And Trump's position?
He threatened a 35% tariff on Canadian exports if no deal was reached by August 1st.
But Carney's holding firm.
Yeah, he vowed to sign only a right deal. Meanwhile, market analysts, according to Reuters, are warning about big impacts on sectors like automotive and lumber.
It really makes you wonder how this could reshape industries that have been intertwined for so long. Decades of reliance potentially shifting?
Fundamentally alter things, yeah.
Okay, let's cross the Atlantic to Europe. Threat level here is moderate, plus risk level is high. And the big news. The U.S. and EU struck a 15% tariff deal.
This is a B2 report. Usually reliable, probably true.
What's the agreement?
On July 28th, President Trump and European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen agreed on a uniform 15% tariff for most EU goods. That's half the 30% originally threatened.
So some relief there. Was there a trade-off?
Yes. In exchange, the EU pledged $600 billion in investment and agreed to buy more U.S. energy and arms. The deal was announced at Trump's golf resort in Scotland.
But 15% is still much higher than before, right?
Yeah. As Reuters noted, it locks in tariffs way above the previous 2.5% average. This means billions in new ongoing costs for manufacturers and consumers across the EU. It's like a hidden tax that'll show up in prices.
And unsurprisingly, the report says that despite avoiding the worst, European companies remain uneasy.
Also a B2. Big names like BMW, Volkswagen, Airbus, LVMH, they expressed relief about avoiding 30%, sure, but they immediately warned that 15% still hurts their competitiveness.
How did the stock market react?
It's interesting. Automaker shares actually fell, even though the broader European index, the Stock 600, initially jumped.
So a nuanced reaction. Relief, but also realism about the cost.
Exactly. Avoiding the worst is one thing, but knowing these new tariffs will likely squeeze profit margins and push prices up, that creates a really challenging environment for key European industries.
And the report also highlights some political backlash, particularly from France. The French PM called the deal a dark day for Europe.
Yeah, another B2. Prime Minister François Bayrou didn't mince words. He accused the EU of capitulating, tweeting it was a dark day when an alliance of free peoples resigns itself to submission.
Strong words. Were other leaders more positive?
The Guardian reported German and Italian leaders saw it more as damage control, but the French European Affairs Minister Benjamin Haddad urged the EU to use its anti-coercion tool.
So this public disagreement within Europe itself adds another layer of uncertainty for investors, doesn't it? Shows real division.
Definitely. Deep divisions over Europe's strategic path, and it raises questions about internal cohesion for future negotiations.
Okay, let's shift over to Asia. Here, the threat level is substantial, risk level moderate. A key positive development seems to be the Thai-Cambodian ceasefire.
Yes, this is a B2 report. On July 28th, Thailand and Cambodia agreed to an immediate ceasefire. This came after 5 days of really intense border clashes.
How bad were the clashes?
Pretty bad. At least 38 people killed and over 300,000 displaced.
Wow. Who mediated the truce?
Malaysia, the U.S., and China all played a role. President Trump even threatened to suspend trade deals if the fighting didn't stop.
And the impact of the ceasefire?
According to Reuters and Al Jazeera, it immediately calmed regional markets and helped preserve vital cross-border trade. It's a really good sign for regional stability.
A good example of diplomacy working to prevent wider disruption.
Exactly. Targeted, multilateral diplomacy diffusing a flashpoint.
But on the other hand, there was a disturbing incident in Thailand itself, a Bangkok market shooting.
Also a B2 report. On the 28th, a gunman killed 5 security guards and wounded 2 at Bangkok's Tor core market. Then he took his own life.
Any known motive?
Police identified him as a former vendor who apparently had grievances against the market management. Al Jazeera and UPI covered this.
That's awful. Does this kind of thing happen often there?
Unfortunately, gun violence isn't that uncommon in Thailand. But this attack really shook investor confidence and tourism in Bangkok.
It's a stark reminder, isn't it? How localized security incidents can have much broader economic impacts, especially on sectors like tourism.
Absolutely. Perception of safety is key for tourism.
The report also touches on North Korea. North Korea is asserting its nuclear status.
Right. This one's flagged B3. That's usually reliable, but only possibly true. The lower confidence reflects how hard it is to verify internal North Korean statements.
What was...
On July 28th, Kim Yo-jong, a high-ranking official, demanded the U.S. accept Pyongyang as a nuclear state. She called U.S. denuclearization efforts childish dreams, according to Reuters.
Just rhetoric, or does it have tangible effects?
It definitely impacts regional stability. The lingering question for investors is how this kind of heightened tension specifically affects, say, South Korean stock markets and defense stocks. It's unpredictable.
Okay, let's move to the Middle East. Threat level here is substantial, risk level is high. A major diplomatic push came from a UN conference pushing for a two-state solution.
This is a B2 report. On the 28th, over 75 countries met in Riyadh. The goal was to create a roadmap for a Palestinian state alongside Israel.
Who was pushing this?
Saudi Foreign Minister Faisal bin Farhan urged irreversible steps towards statehood. His French counterpart, Stéphane Séjourné, called the current situation untenable. The Palestinian PM demanded clear timelines, and the UN Secretary General warned about the global implications of the conflict.
Were the key players there, U.S. and Israel?
Notably, no. U.S. and Israeli delegates were absent, which really highlights the deep divisions. Reuters and Al Jazeera covered this extensively.
And market impact.
Markets, especially oil markets, are watching very closely for any potential shifts in supply agreements that might come out of renewed diplomacy in the region.
On the humanitarian side, there was news that Trump publicly acknowledged Gaza's starvation.
Yes, another B2 report. On the 28th, President Trump said starvation in Gaza was real. He announced plans for food hubs, though he also suggested Israel's announced humanitarian pauses might not be enough. Reuters and The Guardian reported this.
What was the reaction from Israel and Gaza?
Israeli officials denied there was a famine. Gaza health authorities, however, reported hundreds of hunger deaths. It really shows the deep mistrust and the conflicting stories around the crisis.
And international organizations.
The World Food Program, the WFP, called for unhindered aid access. Any aid pledges might involve some complicated U.S. budget reallocations. It's not just about food, it's about information control and confirming facts in a war zone.
Okay, let's turn to Africa. Threat level is substantial, risk level is high. The report details a horrific incident. ISIL claimed responsibility for a DRC church massacre.
Yes, this is a B2 report. On the night of July 27th, armed members of the Allied Democratic Forces, which is affiliated with ISIL, attacked a night mass in Kamanda in the DRC.
What happened?
They killed at least 43 worshippers and burned homes. The UN mission, MONUSCO, plus French and Vatican officials strongly condemned it. Al Jazeera and Vatican News reported on it.
Just devastating.
Yeah.
What are the wider implications?
This will undoubtedly drive up security costs and deter foreign investment in eastern DRC. It makes an already challenging environment even tougher for civilians and aid groups. A terrible example of how extremist violence cripples development.
Elsewhere in Africa, specifically West Africa, Ghana deployed troops to quell a Bauku chieftaincy conflict.
This one carries a B3 flag. Usually reliable, but possibly true, maybe reflecting the fluid situation on the ground.
What triggered the deployment?
On the 28th, Ghana sent more soldiers to the northern Bauku region after a chief, and some students were killed in ethnic clashes related to chieftaincy disputes. Authorities imposed a curfew and banned motorbikes because the violence keeps flaring up.
Does this internal conflict have external effects?
Yes, Reuters reported that the disruption is directly threatening important cross-border trade with Burkina Faso. It hits the regional economy, shows how local disputes can ripple outwards.
Now let's head to Latin America. Threat level is moderate, plus UDEL, risk level is moderate. Some good news from Mexico's state oil firm. Pemex swung to a net profit.
That's right, a B2 report. On July 28th, Pemex posted a net profit of about 59.5 billion pesos for Q2 2025. That reverses a loss from the previous year.
What drove the turnaround?
Largely a stronger peso, revenue actually fell almost 6% because of lower crude prices, and they still have a massive debt load, nearly $99 billion.
So mixed news. Profit is good, but debt remains a risk.
Exactly. The profit might help the Mexican government's finances, but that debt is a huge underlying risk. They are planning to boost production, though, to 1.8 million barrels per day using mixed contracts.
Which could impact global supply.
Potentially, yeah.
And some positive news for Argentinians wanting to travel to the U.S. The country is moving to rejoin the U.S. visa waiver program.
This is an A2 report, completely reliable, probably true.
What's the story?
On the 28th, U.S. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem said Washington is working to get Argentina back into the visa waiver program. She cited their low visa overstay rate and strong ties under President Javier Milei.
They were in it before.
Yeah, from 1996 to 2002. This move, reported by Reuters and UPI, would make travel much easier for Argentine citizens and likely boost tourism and business between the countries.
A tangible benefit of better diplomatic relations.
Definitely. Strengthens economic and diplomatic ties.
Okay, last region. Oceania Pacific. Threat and risk levels are both moderate here. The report notes the UN is urging resolution of the COP31 hosting dispute.
Right, this is a B3. Usually reliable, possibly true.
What's the dispute about?
On the 28th, UN climate chief Simon Still criticized Australia and Turkey because they still haven't decided which one will host the COP31 climate summit. That's the big annual UN climate conference. He also urged them to submit new 2035 emissions targets.
Why does the hosting delay matter?
It's not just about scheduling. This standoff could actually impede crucial climate finance commitments. It slows down the momentum of global efforts to tackle climate change, which is pretty critical right now.
There are also some concerning reports that Russia and China are expanding their presence in Antarctica.
Yeah, another B3. Usually reliable, possibly true. Experts told Australia's ABC on the 28th that Russia and China are building new research stations and infrastructure down there that could potentially have dual military uses.
Military uses in Antarctica.
That's the concern. They warned this could challenge the Antarctic Treaty System, which has kept the continent peaceful and scientific. And it raises security worries for Australia.
So not just science. Could this lead to more defense spending?
It could accelerate defense investment in the region, yeah. And it really raises big questions about the future of international cooperation or maybe competition in a really strategic place.
Okay, let's unpack this even further with the People's Hearsay section. This gives us that fascinating glimpse into public sentiment, social media reactions, often reveals things beyond the headlines.
Always interesting. Let's start with Europe. That tweet from French PM François Bayrou about the EU trade deal being a dark day, it really took off on social media.
How so?
Thousands of retweets, lots of anger expressed. Hashtags like hashtag EU submission and hashtag tariff trauma were trending. And Benjamin Haddad, the European Affairs Minister, echoed it, pushing for the EU's anti-coercion tool.
So strong grassroots disapproval.
Right.
A real political fracture visible online.
Definitely. It shows deep disapproval, even if the deal technically avoided a bigger trade war. Highlights a political divide within the EU.
How about Asia?
A real contrast. Malaysian PM Anwar Ibrahim shared these viral photos of the Thai-Cambodian ceasefire signing. He wrote, "Peace prevails when neighbors talk, not fight."
And that resonated.
Hugely. Widely shared on Twitter, Instagram. Showed strong regional praise for diplomacy actually working. But then, conversely, Thai netizens were expressing just shock and horror over that Bangkok market shooting.
What were they saying?
Trending hashtags translated to things like stop violence and justice for guards, lots of videos shared, demands for stricter gun control. It reflects real social anxiety and a demand for immediate policy action after something like that.
Let's look at the Middle East online reaction.
Saudi Foreign Minister Fazl bin Farhan's remarks from that Riyadh conference on the two-state solution. They were widely shared. Lots of users applauding Saudi leadership on the Palestinian cause. Hashtags like hashtag two-state solution and hashtag Riyadh summit trended across Arab platforms. Shows powerful regional sentiment.
And Trump's comments on Gaza starvation.
That ignited a huge debate on U.S. social media. His supporters welcomed the acknowledgement, but critics accused him of political opportunism. It just highlights how humanitarian crises get viewed through this incredibly complex, polarized political lens, even when the suffering is undeniable.
What about Africa?
Congolese activists on Twitter were circulating these heartbreaking images of the Kamanda Church attack victims. They were calling for international intervention, denouncing the government's inability to protect people. The hashtag Justice for Kamanda trended regionally, just widespread grief and demand for accountability.
And in Ghana, regarding the Baku conflict.
People on Facebook and X praised the military for restoring order, yes, but they also criticized the government for not addressing the root causes of the chieftaincy dispute. They were calling for dialogue, for sustainable development. Shows a desire for long-term solutions, not just security crackdowns.
And finally, Latin America online.
In Ecuador, users shared awful footage from that El Zampam bar attack, just lamenting the rampant gang violence. The hashtag Seguridad Ya, security now, trended locally, a clear demand for tougher anti-gang measures.
But on a lighter note, in Argentina.
Yeah. Argentinians were celebrating the news about potentially getting back into the U.S. visa waiver program, posting jokes about visiting Disney World without needing paperwork, praising President Milei for improving U.S. ties. It's a fun insight, but it shows how these policy changes can directly impact personal hopes and the national mood.
So connecting all these dots, what does the correlational analysis tell us? What are the broader implications linking these events?
Well, let's look at trade and currency globally first. Those U.S.-EU and U.S.-China trade talks, they're not happening in isolation. They simultaneously influence major currency pairs.
How so?
The optimism around tariffs strengthened both the yuan and the U.S. dollar, while the euro weakened. This isn't just market noise, it's a live indicator of global economic power shifts. If talks broke down, you could see a dollar rally, risk-off sentiment reflecting deeper shifts in capital flows that guide long-term investment.
Okay, what about commodity prices?
Saudi Arabia planning to hike its official selling price, the OSP, for crude oil, and Chile wanting to discuss copper tariffs both point towards firmer commodity prices globally.
So oil and copper might rise.
Yeah, which benefits producer economies, obviously, but hurts importers. Higher OSPs don't just nudge up fuel costs. They feed into global benchmarks like Brent futures. That could trigger a wider inflationary effect across industries, hitting consumer prices everywhere.
And the link between security shocks and markets.
It's undeniably clear from these reports. Those violent incidents, the DRC church massacre, the Ecuador bar attack, the Bangkok shooting, they're more than just tragic news events.
Right.
They immediately erode investor confidence. They can directly influence insurance premiums and how sovereign risk is assessed. These are hard inputs into investment decisions, raising the cost of doing business, and potentially diverting capital away from productive uses in those regions.
It really paints a complex, interconnected picture.
Absolutely. Nothing happens in a vacuum.
That brings us to the end of today's deep dive into the intelligence report for Monday, July 28th, 2025. We really hope this exploration has given you some valuable insights, maybe a clearer, more nuanced picture of what's happening around the world.
Hope it was useful.
You can follow us on YouTube and Spotify. Just look for The Deep Dive. And we always look forward to hearing your opinions, so please do like, share, and comment. This is it for today. Enjoy your start of the week.